Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the SPS DAOn Hall. I'll be your host, Claiborne, and today we will be joined by PJ from Jupiter Corp to discuss the ongoing validator development and finally give a little update on the progress of the SPS chain. How's it been going, PJ? How you doing?
Been going good. Can't complain. And you said Jupiter Corp, but I still work at Splinterlands too. Like, don't count me out. I'm still a part of Splinterlands. Things have been going well. Slowly but surely, looks like we've got a lot of our stuff on track. I can't complain too much about the dev team. There's really nothing to complain about. Actually, they've done a really good job, especially with the lack of we had another downsizing at the company a little while back, so we've had less and less people available for testing, but it seems like they're still making their way through and getting everything taken care of. Testing does take significantly longer than it did when we had originally started, but I don't think that's going to be much an issue. A couple of months ago, was it about 2 months ago, we released the code, or no, it was about a month, about 45 days ago, I think. We had posted the code up on GitHub, and I apologize. I thought I had mentioned it in the prior DAO Hall that we did, that we wouldn't really be looking at the GitHub repository. We just wanted to make sure that everybody knew where we were in the cycle of development, that work was actually done, that a lot of the work had actually been done by Steam Monsters Corp beforehand, before we started this endeavor, but the devs had gotten it to a place where we felt comfortable putting up a release. So if anybody was tracking the GitHub repository, it's not really a safe measure of work done or work completed. And there's a couple reasons for that. Just for the most part, it was more or less just focusing on getting the things that we knew we had to fix and getting the things done that we needed to wrap up, which there's still quite a few, but significantly less than when we started. And then also just communication wise, it's hard to have engineers focused on testing and then also answering, the very questions that have already been fixed in a live production branch of a project. So I know it's meant to be open sourced, but we'll open source it when we have the first actual version or iteration out, and then we'll do much more active management. As you can see, if anybody ever reads my my development updates that come in from the validator, well, I send out like the validator development document once a month. That we're at a point now where we're doing all of our own internal testing. We've also got nodes spun up that I think the team is just working on the cutover. Basically, the cutover would be like, as soon as we're about to switch on our validators, what happens to all the internal operating systems on Steam Monsters. So it's not necessarily something that we do on the validators team, but it's something that we have to check with on the Steam Monster side, and we have to be aware of what's affected in the game, any of the backend APIs that change or have any kind of mutations that we haven't caught yet coming into the system. So it's going to be interesting. We've already started actually working on the cutover. I think this week was the first actual production cutover test that they did into a QA environment, where it was like a full cutover. So I think we're still waiting to see what the results are of the cutover, and see if it actually affected anything. Other than that, a lot of the stuff that we're also working on right now too has to revolve around the snapshots and the scaling of the snapshot services, just to make it more applicable, make it easier for people to actually get all the data that they need to run a validator. So if you're not familiar with the service, it basically just expedites the amount of blocks, or the way that you retrieve blocks to initially start up a validator. And so we set everything up on Cloudflare to make it easy, using a caching service to ingest all the blocks really quick, make sure that you guys get it kind of like as an expedited block service. So testing all those things at once, it's pretty broad. We're a small team of devs on this side still, but we're making way, and everything's been pretty good. Can't complain. Like I said, always wish that we have more time to do stuff, but obviously we don't. Um, but I don't think it's going to affect the performance or the results that we get from the validator team. But
I
that's
know,
kind of just an idea of where we are currently.
and I know I had some people that like kind of like looked over the initial like Git release, and like one of the comments was like people that like talked to me about it thought that like in general it looks like we have a much more robust system than a lot of projects that put out, you know, like quote unquote like validators or nodes. Um, and you know, I think that part of that speaks to, you know, the actual like focus on decentralization of the project, where you know, like in general, like we're planning for this to like essentially be like our blockchain. You know, it's gonna run like L2 on Hive, but I mean, this will be like the source of truth for like pretty much everything that goes on in the Splinterlands, right?
Yes, correct. Absolutely, and it needs to be too. I think overall, like if I was to stay true to Matt's vision, this would be wholly decentralized, right? Which is, I mean, we're getting there. Obviously, like the DAO now has its own responsibilities that it has to pay for that are all involved in the longevity of the community. But Matt's true uh, calling here is to make this fully decentralized. And as far as the validator being robust, it has to be, and not to the fault of anybody. It's just that Hive isn't necessarily the most supported blockchain. So there's a lot of things that go into our validation service that are um, particular to our type of environment, right? Um, I would say the easiest, like I think I've even shown this to you, Clay. I don't know if I've ever shown it to people in public, but like I could spin up a network on Ethereum in like 15 minutes in a private net and like launch my own nodes and call it a fully decentralized system. All you need is a configuration for the ETH environment. And then when you launch your nodes, you just launch it on a private network. And then all of a sudden you have, you know, basically your own version of an EVM network, right? And that comes from years of people contributing. And then obviously the EVM system is just kind of designed to be copied and manipulated, right? That's what Binance pretty much did, right? Like when they launched their own chain initially, they just forked Ethereum and was like, "Hey, guess what? We're like our own blockchain project." That's not what's going on here. This is wholly original code. It's not something that was just taken off of the shelf and repurposed and just stuck a new brand or a name on it. And again, like the benefit is like all of the infrastructure engineering team that helped develop the services for Splinterlands the game are the ones that are working on validators. So for the most part, they're the most familiar with our scaling issues, with the way that we ingest and egress information from the different availability zones that we have. Um, and with that being said, we're also kind of very well versed in the issues that come from Hive and the Hive chain too. Not that there has been a lot, but like we've had issues that just come up randomly, and then obviously they'll do updates from time to time too. So it does become somewhat of a list of unknowns that you have to be kind of aware of. Like your situational awareness has to be much greater. But um, yeah, it's not like working on like some standardized EVM chain where you can just copy some code and launch a network and call it a day.
Yeah, that's actually that brings up a question that someone had asked me before, and probably good to cover it here. If you know, well, if slash when there are actually like Hive forks, do you think there will have to be like a lot of a lot of like upgrading or like maintenance work the L2 basically to keep it functional.
Yes, I do. But that's the whole point of being open source, right? Hopefully, if someone launches a network that has a different kind of configuration or mechanism behind how it manages authority, then hopefully having an allow us to convey the changes and make the changes beforehand. I do believe Splinterlands is still the majority transaction holder for Hive. So if anything was developed on Hive, I would hope that it would have consideration towards Splinterlands because the two are so tightly, whether they like it or don't like it, the two are so tightly coupled, right? That both of those, both communities, and I've said this a bunch of times, it's a good reason for both communities to really work together, right? Um, and hopefully there are more people forking Hive and doing stuff with Hive, um, because that it just, if it's on top of the same type of infrastructure, then you catch more of what they call the long tail transactional volume output, which is, you have rather than a ton of big applications doing transactions on one singular chain eating up resources, you have a bunch of smaller applications running their own independent networks that are contributing to a much greater pool of networks. Or sorry, a pool of transactions. But
Yeah,
that's here nor there right now. We really just need to focus on what we currently have, and hopefully, people will adhere and adopt to some kind of open source standard once everything is live.
yeah, that would definitely be nice. That's one of the things that as like a long term member of Steam and then Hive, I've basically been here since the beginning. That's one of the things that has kind of I guess like always been on my mind with Hives. It feels like don't um they don't work on like a standard uh basically like protocol of how they want to handle L2s, right? Like we've seen
Yeah.
basically a Hive engine and Splinterlands are kind of like the only like long-term successful L2s that have been built on a Hive. But I mean, like I know that we've seen them try like multiple different networks. Like I want to say like Three Speak tried to build like an L2. I'm not sure whatever happened with that. Um, I know that there was one that was like that they were trying to build like a decentralized ecosystem on top of Hive that was supposed to have a DEX, and I'm trying to remember what happened with that one, but I haven't heard anything about that in a while. The one that I keep hearing about now is VSC, which I don't know. I get conflicting information on it, and I guess I need to spend some more time. Maybe like I'll have to talk to their lead developer and kind of like try to get a sense of things. But I've heard everything from it's a Bitcoin L2 that interacts with Hive to it's supposed to be like an Ethereum L2 that interacts with Hive.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah, yeah. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I heard about that too. Yeah.
so I mean, like I'm very hopeful that like we end up seeing Hive kind of like expanding and starting to get like a standardized basically like some kind of like standardized operating protocol that like all these projects can build off of and grow off of, because ultimately like that's how you start getting like that kind of snowball effect where it's just easier and easier for developers to come over, fork something, start building their own thing off of it, as long as it all kind of like
So
ties back.
so for the use case of Splinterlands, like Hive is phenomenal. Like it's great, right? And I know why Aggie was so hung up on trying to get more games brought over, because competitive advantages is the speed and the efficiency of managing large scale resources across a blockchain is amazing. And it's like I have this like crazy kind of story that kind of goes into the history of crypto, but originally Steemit was a Dan Larimer project, right? And Dan Larimer is like one of my favorite blockchain engineers. A lot of people don't like him, But I love the guy, and I've seen him
Hey, dude,
speak a few times.
he's been helping me prepare for the rapture. I've been following him
Oh
on
yeah,
Twitter.
yeah, straight up, right? Yeah, he's some kooky shit. Um, but yeah, he's I forget what the project was beforehand. Something shares. It was like it wasn't coin shares. It was
Bit
some other
shares,
kind
bit
of like
shares.
yeah, was it BitShares? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, yeah. It
Project
was
of
like
his.
it
It's
was
also
like a
like
DEX basically, right? Like a whole like decentralized exchange protocol. I've actually used it a couple of times, but like it was rough, but like whenever you like I kind of think of
yeah,
this stuff like in terms of like how I think about like my first Nintendo, right? Like I mean like maybe I was
yeah,
like, 5, 6 years old. I got my first Nintendo. I'm playing Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt. It's like it's changing the world in my mind. And we look at like what we've got now, but like it's easy to like look back and say like, oh, that was a clunky piece of junk, but like compared to nothing existed before. you know? Like this is some
yeah.
guy
Right
like
for yeah,
building it.
yeah.
It's pretty impressive.
Dan was yeah. He was just like a very visionary as far as like what you could use the applications for and trying to solve problems. And then EOS was kind of, I would say, his great downfall because he had given up on all these other great projects, including Steemit, in order to go launch EOS. And EOS has obviously had its issues, right? Um, yeah, after raising what was it, $6.5 billion, something I forget. It was like the
You know,
largest ICO ever, but
Block One is literally still a top 10 Bitcoin holder.
yeah, it's crazy, right? I've met Brandon, the guy that runs it, a couple of times. Brandon Bloomer, I think, or Bloom. I don't remember his last name.
So you're saying
He's
one
really
day SPS is gonna be like the new Block One? That's what you're saying?
no, no, no. SPI block one, and sorry, and I know I'm taking away from the validator conversation, but I thought this was kind of funny. Block one invested in a separate chain other than EOS, which is the chain that they raised all their money on. Right? They put, if I remember correctly, they had invested in another blockchain to come build services for them. And the EOS DAO cut all their funding um, to block one, and I believe all the validators on that network blocked them from doing anything, which is kind of crazy. Um, yeah,
But
just
I gotta say
no
though, like
shortfall of drama.
that is like literally one of the most brilliant things about blockchain to me. It's one of my favorite things. Like even if you look at the Hive situation, right? Like the entire community can literally reject the people that built the thing and say like, screw you, we're going to do our own thing, or they can, I mean, like I think it would be pretty tragic at this point to see like the DAO try to kick the company out, but like you get what I'm saying. Like at this point, like it would be very problematic for like the SPS DAO, but like seeing other projects, like Hive, literally just kicked Steam at Inc. out. They were just like, we're gonna go do our own thing. We can do this ourselves. We don't need you anymore. And it's just fascinating to watch like how this whole crypto industry develops and how these things evolve to where it's like the communities and the projects take on a life of their own. And to me, like this is literally the root of decentralization. And it's one of the reasons why like I've been so like gung ho about like we need validators, right? Because I mean I think we have to decentralize the risk away from the company. Like we don't want a company being a single point of failure. So that's one of the
Yeah,
reasons why I'm like, and we've had conversations. I think the last time you were on, we kind of talked about the idea of like the DAO trying to get a license to the code. And I mean, like to me,
perpetual
these things
license.
are
Yeah,
all
I've been a huge proponent of getting a perpetual license for the DAO. It's like one of
like
my strongest core initiatives.
I think that is like the best possible scenario for this entire community, and it's nothing to do with the company. It's the fact that like the project has that safety net of like it can live on in some form, just by like the
Oh,
community initiative, right?
and it's you need kind of like the nucleus of um, it takes basically both ends, right? Like you have to have part of because the way I'm just saying because of the way that Splinterlands is structured, right? The idea of getting a perpetual license to me is like the next, um, how do I say this? Probably the next most important step that the DAO needs to take in order to further decentralize itself, right? Like there should always be an initiative towards greater decentralization for this product. And I think Splinterlands could be one of the most successful use cases for a fully decentralized, completely community based augmentation of an application that used to be centralized, right? And we don't, it's really gone more from decentralized to centralized in a lot of places, but this is actually probably one of the best use cases for it because you still have a very strong user base. You have a company that is keeping itself alive right now, but obviously is like a core of where all the new development comes from. But we're starting to split that stuff off, right? Like parts of that are starting to split off and break off. And so, it's very common to see these types of things happen as a group gets more and more, I'd say, mature, right? And can kind of take on its own responsibilities. The problem with a lot of decentralized communities is the fact that you just have a lot of uninformed people who are kind of new to the ecosystem, have their own agenda, and they come in really hot and heavy, and they don't realize everybody's kind of been through it, you know. And just because they're like loud doesn't necessarily make them right. And it usually means they're the lesser of the invested types of people. All of the whales that I've talked to from Splinterlands are like super cool people. For the most part, I'd probably chill and have drinks with them and hang out and just talk shop because a lot of them are very smart and they got to the position that they were in because uh, they've invested a ton in this game. Basically, like they've been around the block. They've kind of seen all the drama, and I would say a lot of them have also kind of realized that it's not about how much you're in, but kind of like when you got in, and if you're an early participator. I forget who it was. I think it was Gold Matters that told me this. Like depends on when you got in. You're still happy as a clam if you were extremely early in the Splinterlands because of how well it's performed. So yeah, comparative to like other things that are happening, like I think Splinterland's poised to be able to take care of itself. And you have a founder who's in charge right now, Matt, who's more worried about everybody else than he is kind of about himself and just making sure that we can kind of see this through and that this thing lives forever. Because when you hear Matt talk, he talks about like this is all he wants to do for the rest of his life, right? He just wants to build a cool game, have fun, and not work another day because this is fun for him, right? So I don't know, it's hard to get all of those things right, and I think that we, for the most part, have a really good shot at being fully decentralized, but it's going to take time, and it's definitely going to test a lot of people's patience. You know, but if you've been in crypto long enough, you've probably had your patience tested quite a few times already, every couple of years, right? So, is what it is. But I think we'll make it through whatever crazy spell this is. Coinbase just had their like worst performing day on record, and it looks like their bounce back was kind of thwarted this morning. But Bitcoin's back up above 70 right now. We'll see if it holds. Hopefully we'll have some long-term, stable, consistent growth coming out of this. It seems like gold and
Just
everything
remember,
else is doing all right. But
just remember, it's not a bull
anywho,
market until
yeah,
Coinbase goes down.
yeah, all right, yeah, yeah. You'd be surprised at how, yeah. I'd much rather be invested in crypto than in stocks at the current moment, but that's a whole other story. Anyways, back to validators. Do we want to go through some of the stuff that we had? I know we had
Yeah,
some questions.
yeah. There's
Um,
some questions in the audience too. Like, let me see. Mango Wombo is asking, Could you clarify whether the validator is currently storing only a certain number of blocks, or is it designed to function like an archive node with all blocks stored? Additionally, how large is the current database? I know that Hive can be quite large, which makes me concerned for standard license holders who might underestimate the space needed to run it.
Yes, it is actually designed to hold everything, but you can actually start it from a oh god, I can't think, like an aggregated roll up point, right?
Like
That's
you can
part of the
bootstrap it,
Cloudflare.
basically.
Yeah. It's like light mode basically, and
Okay.
yeah, he's correct. The block is like that. That's one of the reasons why we set up Cloudflare. It's not the only reason, but it's the primary reason why we set up Cloudflare, because syncing down all of those blocks takes forever, and is not fun. So what we did was we created a R2 cache on Cloudflare that has everything on there, and then you can also start in a light mode, which I forget what the mode name is, and I apologize. But yeah, you can start it up from a point in the archive in order to expedite that process. But yes, that is true. It is a very large data set. Couldn't tell you off the top of my head right now, just because I've had so many numbers thrown at me. But I could look at the R2 cache when I get out of here, and I could probably give you guys a straight number on where it currently is and how large that is.
Yeah, let's see. He's also asking, given your extensive understanding of various blockchains, what do you think Hive needs in terms of infrastructure? If you were starting a project on a Hive, what would you build?
What would I build? Um, Automated market maker would be the first thing I would build, to be completely transparent AMMs, and have fully sourced AMMs very similar to like what Uniswap has. Um, I think they're the one of the most critical functioning pieces of any financial economy, like any kind of economy, right? And probably one of the greatest financial creations in the last 100 years is people think I'm crazy, but it's Uniswap v3 concentrated liquidity positions, just because of how they work, and um, just the whole entire idea behind setting positions within ranges. That's, if I had the time, that's what I would focus on. Although I would say I've talked to somebody here at Splinterlands, a couple of the whales actually. Any kind, like, and I say this just from my own understanding. Like, obviously, a game works really, really well on Hive because Splinterlands runs on top of it and has had relatively low amount of issues compared to all other games. But I think that this would be a great platform for a large scale derivatives network. A lot of people uh, don't understand the value of derivatives, and also the amount of transactions that happen behind the scenes in derivatives markets. But derivatives would basically need the same type of throughput that a game would need. And I teach a class at UCI, University of California, Irvine. And part of that class is about market making. And the derivatives market is about 60 times larger than the stock market, right? And derivatives are traded in a fashion that is very high frequency transactional sets, and it also happens behind closed doors a lot of times. So creating basically a credit and derivatives market would be massive for decentralization, and probably only makes sense to do it on a chain like Hive. And that's a multi-quadrillion-dollar industry, right? Don't ask me how I know. I've just been in finance for a very long time. Like, I see the perfect use case for a credit and debt market being traded on top of a platform with the frequency of millions and millions of transactions a day, which we know we can do because we've done it at Splinterlands. So that's where my head goes. Sorry. It's a bit
Interesting.
of an offshoot, but that's what I would build if I had the time.
Okay, let's see. Lewis is asking, is the SPS validator code already testable, or is there a testnet available?
No, so that's that's part of what the cutover is for today, actually, or not today, this week, I should say. That's what we're cutting over. So we're practicing our cutover onto the new test network with a new QA service setup. So um, hopefully, I will have good report on that. But you should be able, like, we have the code up. You can pull down the repository and try to run it. But we'll have an actual validator QA network set up. And then the next portion of what we're trying to do is to invite a small group of community members to test with us. Usually it goes to like what used to be the Mavs, but like this will probably be a little bit more focused just because we have very specific parameters that we're trying to test, and then it also can just be a bit intensive. So I don't have necessarily like the dev resources to do a full scale open test yet. But
See.
hopefully, after we get through some of the initial QA stuff, we can open it up to everybody. Hopefully, in the next month or so.
So, PJ, let me pitch this to you right quick. Cause like, just hearing that right now, it's kind of got me thinking. I know there are a few guys in the community that really want to get in on this. Like I'm pretty sure like Lewis and Mango Wambo are two of these people.
Sorry, it's a
but
little hard to hear you. It's a little hard to
oh,
hear you, Clay.
okay, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, much
Okay,
better.
yeah, I have I got a new desktop mic because people were saying like they couldn't hear my old one, but like I have to stay like an inch away from it to keep the volume consistent. Like I'm not used to having a like one of these fancy mics. I'm used to using the gaming headset my whole life. But
Yeah.
I know that there's a few guys in the community that do want to get involved and do want to start like testing and like can help you guys out. Would you like me like would you like if they want to like reach out to me, I can start kind of like putting a list together and like I know you may not have time to like just screen all these people, but basically people with some development background that can like actually run a node and help you guys test, maybe like in a few weeks or something like that.
Yeah, 100%. I would really appreciate that. We were just going to ask some of the existing Mavs, but if there's a more curated list, then absolutely that would be
Well,
phenomenal, Clay.
yeah, I mean, like I think it would be, especially like for what you're talking about, like really early stage. I mean, like you want people that have some idea what they're doing, right? Because you don't want to be babysitting and trying to like answer, like a million questions about like, well, how do I bootstrap the database and everything. Like you want people that have some understanding and have like worked with Hive that can, get you to that point of doing like a full open testnet, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, let me. I
Um,
will. So, guys, message me after the meeting if you're interested in this, and like I'll try to gather some names for PJ just so we can kind of streamline this a little bit. But let's see. We do have some more questions. And like Lewis, he actually kind of answered this one already about the GitHub. It's not currently like a fully active GitHub because they just don't have the team to manage all the pull requests and everything. That was mainly just to like kind of show you guys where we're at. Um, just
yeah, we were asked to basically provide the code to make sure that like there was a there, right? And then also to clarify, yeah, like it wasn't just a, a go nowhere, show nothing project, because I know some of these projects in the past have been, and I know validators, and again, it was before my time actually was sold to everybody. So I'm just trying to fulfill on that promise and make sure everybody can see what we're doing. So and also see that there is quite a bit of work that's already been done to show people that we weren't just randomly asking for cash. It's not like that at all. But the idea would be to take our focus off of internal QA and then focus more towards external QA. And then at that point, we'll start managing tickets and doing everything through GitHub, because it just doesn't, like, everything is still just very internalized right now as far as development and where all the eyeballs are. So I
I see.
apologize, but that was kind of the impression that I got, was that everybody just wanted to see where we were and make sure that we weren't, um, you know, making stuff up about this project, but there had already been a significant amount of work done.
let's see. From Mango Wamba, do we need Cloudflare cache for starting up or syncing the node initially? Could you give a brief example of what the SquitchDB tool is used for?
Sketch manages
Yeah.
migrations and mostly database changes. So if we and also types and other things that come from the database. So that's what Sketch is used for. It's just another tool or package that we use inside of the project. Cloudflare, you do not need Cloudflare in order to run this. I think one of the questions was, does validators reduce the server expenses for the company? And the answer is no. The company pays for a Cloudflare instance, R2 cache, in order to manage the ingest egress pipeline of data that gets synced into the blocks. Plus, every time a new validator is started, it needs to pull down the whole history of the chain or a snapshot with some time frame, like a light version of it. And that's what Cloudflare is used for. So you do not need Cloudflare, but we do. And it is pretty costly. I think we spend about $3,000 a month on that Cloudflare instance in order to provide that service. So it's not cheap, but we do it because we know everybody's going to be struck with severe lag times, or not lags, but just takes forever to sync the nodes down. So that's why we created
Yeah,
that service.
that's definitely man. Like I can remember many projects on Hive where we end up having to like spend multiple days just spinning up nodes. But let's see.
Yeah,
I know we
well,
gotta.
when you're
I know
talking
we got.
about all of like history from transactions from Splinterlands, it just gets increasingly larger and larger and larger.
Yeah. So I don't know how much time we got with you today. So let me try to like power through some more of these questions.
Yeah, no worries.
So we already answered the so validators aren't going to really help like reduce the company's server expense. It's just not really what it's designed for. What kind of transactions will the validators handle, and what will continue to be handled by the company? Right? Like, is there a
You can get a full list of transactions actually directly out of the code. Can I post this? Let me see. And sorry, I don't have my Discord open because
let me
I'm
see. I can.
reading a.
I think I can copy the link to the schema. 1 second.
Yeah, so there is a. I can post it right here.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is.
I
So
just posted it in the main stage chat.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Which
there's.
is
I always forget there's like this separate chat. Yeah. Okay. So that's what I shared in the
excuse
town
me.
hall chat. So it's the same thing. Um.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Perfect.
So like we missed a question in here. From Maffet. I always forget that they have like this separate chat that's tied to the channel. Let's see, PJ, just want your perspective on this. If we have sufficient resources, will it be wiser for us to stay in Hive or move to some other blockchain, like maybe Ether BSC?
So um, that is actually a great question. So in order to be, how do I say this without sounding like a moron? Technically, in order to be fully decentralized, right, it shouldn't matter what chain you're on, right? Like this is like kind of the idea behind sharding chains and having different types of mechanisms for managing assets. It's kind of also the reason behind like Polkadot, right? If you guys are familiar with the Polkadot project. Um, but the idea is to be multifaceted. And I would say if, and this actually goes back to about to uh, fall back on a previous statement about things that I would build on Hive. Um, I would build much better EVM token transaction management services too, if I could. The reason being is Hive makes a great decentralized L2 for EVMs, believe it or not. Like, having and recording transactions from other states or virtual state machines. Um, you could do on Hive much cheaper than you can pretty much anywhere else. So, like Lightning Network, Lightning Protocol, and all these things that happen outside of the normal chain, but still have some kind of cryptographic bearing, and like it's mostly done through what they call like a directional acyclical graph or a DAG. In order to validate transactions is awesome, and Hive is perfect for that. So I would love to see Hive build more on like and it's very simple to do. It just takes some security, right? Better methods for managing tokens in and out of the Hive ecosystem onto different EVMs. And the only reason I say that is because I think that if you look at the way crypto works, right? Um, basically, all the value of crypto is conveyed through arbitrage. When I say conveyed, if the price of Bitcoin goes up, you'll watch the price of Ethereum follow, typically a little bit of a lag, right? And then you see everything else go up, right? And the reason for that being is because people will trade down the gaining asset into further assets where they can extract more value based on the trend that if Bitcoin goes up, basically there's more money available or more capital to be expanded throughout the market, right? And so in triangular arbitrage, you're basically trading between three different asset pairs. And you're trading through what they call an intermediary token in order to get the value of another token. So that's why you see that always happen, is because arbitrage is basically the primary market function behind pretty much all of decentralization. So the more exposure that Hive has to those assets, uh, the more volatility it will be able to capture. And volatility is a good and a bad thing, right? Um, and basically, I think it would bring more transactional volume as well as more just capital value to Hive because of that. And capital being just general market capital through all these third party integrations, right? And there's no doubt like connecting to Bitcoin and connecting to Ethereum is like where the money is. It's where all the money is, right? And then some will say BSC as well. We did a good job basically capturing some of that market through BSC, but we didn't do a very good job with Ethereum or, what else we got? Polygon, Optimism, Cello, uh, Avalanche, right? There's like all these other chains that now have substantial value behind them that we could interoperate with more effectively. And when I say interoperate, from the gaming standpoint, it means being able to accept payments from all those different chains seamlessly, right? And convey assets seamlessly. Um, and then from a DAO perspective, it's making sure that the value can be locked and conveyed to different chains seamlessly between Hive. So I think that's something that I look forward to. I know that I've talked to Clay quite a bit about this. He sees some white papers that I've drawn up about that particular topic. And it's something that we've actually tried to promote probably, I don't know, for the last year and a half, 2 years, Clay. I don't know how long we've been talking about it, but it's been a while. It's been quite a while.
Yeah, yeah. I'm actually I don't know. I try not to talk about stuff too much until like I think it's like a done deal. But like I can say that like what I've been trying to focus on because like originally I was thinking like we were gonna try to just like start expanding to new chains, but I mean ultimately like the end goal of that is to start getting payment processors so that we can start getting like fiat on ramps and off ramps, and we can start doing things like basically pushing volume through these uh these like decentralized pools so that way like we can actually get value in and out of the ecosystem much easier. uh, and so like I've actually been trying to uh, get us a new payment processor that will feed into our pancake pools, which I think ultimately will build more and more value for the DAO, right? again, like this is kind of early. Like I said, normally I don't talk about this stuff until I feel like it's a done deal. But like we've gotten a good ways along in the process. So like I feel like at this point maybe it's just a matter of time. But like the goal would be, just like average Joe can like come in, they can like use their credit card to buy SPS through the service, and then the service will facilitate by pulling tokens out of the pool basically, and then selling them for like like a slight markup, like let's just say 1%, whatever they're gonna do. So like what's cool is that like every time they do that, that would end up generating value for the pool, which as of now, the DAO is actually like the liquidity provider in these pools. So we create a scenario where there's like constant like volume for our token. It's also generating value for the DAO, and it's like creating a much easier environment for essentially like for users, like your average user that doesn't care about all this stuff to just get their tokens much quicker and easier. And of course, with the burning SPS to get deck, it kind of like it creates this whole synergy in the ecosystem that makes it much easier for people to just be able to take out their credit card and buy, like their currency for the game, like they would with like any other kind of, like let's say you play CS:GO and you want to buy some keys from Valve. Like if you play Splinterlands and you want to buy some packs, right now you can use PayPal to kind of get credits. But like, what if you just want to buy some SPS or you want to buy some deck? Well, the company can't really sell that stuff. So getting a getting a good fiat on ramp generates, basically revenue for the DAO. It helps create a better environment for the users, and I don't know. That's one of my big projects that I've been working on, and I'm hoping we can get there. It kind of ties into a lot of the audit stuff and everything that we've been doing. You know, and just I guess to update you on this, PJ, because I know you've been busy. We're actually going to be sending in the application to update all of our coin tracking stuff. I think this next week coming up. So it's like
Oh,
a lot of
thank
this
God.
stuff is always going on, yeah. But it's just everything takes time. Let's see. I know we still
I
got it.
just want to say one other thing about that
Yeah,
too.
go ahead.
It's when it comes to like the coin tracking stuff, it's not just us; it's the other companies in crypto who a lot of times don't necessarily have a very large team either anymore. So they're just slow to respond. Right? Everything just takes a little bit more time right now on
Yeah,
that front,
and
which is
we
kind of
don't have the
crazy. Like,
resources to buy their attention.
yeah, we try things and we get stuff done on our end too, which is crazy. But like, we could reflect on like the sushi bonds, right? Like, we had everything ready to go. Like, we were so quick and we got everything done. And then it was just hurry up and wait, right? Hurry up and wait, hurry up and wait, hurry up and wait. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah,
and
sorry. And
I'm one
I
of
just
those,
wanted
like, I
to
guess.
also, real quick, Moffat had another question. So you would still choose Hive even if you had other options. I'm familiar with all the other options, and Matt had really kind of opened my eyes. This is where give credit where credit is due. Definitely, when Matt picked Hive to launch this game on, um, Matt doesn't buy into hype, you know, and probably one of the most level-headed decisions that he could have made was to not launch this game on any other chain but Steam it. Um, because of all the reasons that were productive to the game and not productive to just a money grab. So, although there are, you can build games on a lot of these networks now, at the time, it was by far the best choice that he could have made. And I still think that to this day, it serves as the best chain for the purpose of this game, right? Other chains might be more suited for different aspects of gaming, whatever. Um, it's more about him. Yeah, it's just more logical, right? And I didn't know. I remembered Steam It, but I wasn't familiar with Hive when I came over back in 2022. About halfway through 2022 is when I actually started. But I quickly realized that it wasn't. for any other particular purpose other than the fact that it did everything that he needed it to do. Right. So, genius move on his part. I probably would have not done that and probably would have went to like some other hype chain that doesn't exist anymore just because it would have been easy. But he was right. I think he was dead right. And kudos to him for making such a good call under such a confusing time to make choices like that. Um, because it served us well. It served us very well. And to be honest, like I think we're kind of turning a page now towards like Hive and towards Splinterlands. There's some things that are happening that are mutually beneficial, like always. It's a little hard to get things started at first, but things are starting to happen. And, we've started our marketing and they've approved to help us with marketing, which is great. And so I just look forward to more of this stuff in the future. Hopefully, we can keep that thread rolling and both sides will stand to gain. Most of the bad actors are out now, right? Everybody that's here now just wants, it's more of a longevity play. So I think that Hive was the right choice, especially for where the market is right now. And I think that honestly, that not enough people know the benefits of why you would use a chain like Hive and how you could use it to do the types of things that are typically necessary um, for decentralization. So, anyways, kudos to Hive as well.
Yeah, it's definitely it was definitely interesting whenever they figured out that you could start using the JSONs like that, and then you know along came Splinterlands and everything else after that. Hive Engine. It's been an interesting few years. Let's see. So we got the list
I
of
had one other question actually here
Oh,
from
yeah,
Mambo
go ahead.
Wombo. Yeah, where was it? I think it was a question about what Hive needs about infrastructure. Hive just needs more engineers, to be honest. We need more people working behind the scenes on Hive. It's a small group. There's like 25 or 30 people total on the GitHub repository from the last fork that are on there. And hopefully, Splinterlands has done a lot on its end to add support. I don't think there's anything really contributed from the Splinterlands team on the Hive primary repository, but in terms of like general infrastructure, um, services like onboarding, payment processors, stuff like that. Um, but maybe there is a fit here where, maybe through validators or some other project, there's some more cohesive operational tasks that we could share between the two. I'm not sure. But more or less, I think communicating is probably always going to help. So more communication between us and Splinterlands, or sorry, us and Hive, Splinterlands and Hive. Um, and then if we could just get more engineers to contribute to the project, I mean, it's engineers are basically the golden ticket in crypto. I hate to say it, but it's absolutely true. It's like the better the engineering team, and the more engineers you have working on a project, the more opportunity it gives to everybody that's a part of it, right? So, with that in mind, like I just, and honestly, it just needs to be marketed. Like we should be out there talking about the benefits of the chain. Yeah, granted, it's got a lot of history, but that just kind of adds to like the the flavor of the argument as to why to use it. Like it's got quite a history, but I guess from two standpoints, it's actually served the test of time for Hive. Like development continues to happen, and the decentralized community has basically taken over complete control of the chain from more centralized entities, right? So it's got quite a unique story and perspective. It just really needs more engineers and more marketing done around the use cases for Hive. So maybe that would be most beneficial. Sorry,
Okay,
Clay.
let's see.
Didn't mean to rant.
Will it be possible to run multiple validators with a single machine, or will each require its own machine?
No, you can run multiple instances of the validator on a single machine. And then you can also stake multiple licenses to a single validator. So I hope that helps answer the question. I don't have machine specs yet for any of this. I will here, hopefully, after we get through QA, give a more thorough machine spec for it after we run through our testing. And then if you're hosting a full copy of the chain, it's rather large, so it could be pretty expensive. And then also, if you're running multiple instances of validators, you will have to have multiple instances of the database as well. So it does get ever so more costly because of that reason. And it's just, unfortunately, it's just how it's set up. You can't have multiple validators communicating to the same database and then have validations come in with any kind of like reorganization pattern or anything like that. You'll just lock up your database. So you have to have multiple instances of the database as well.
Okay. So I know you said you don't have machine specs yet. I'm just trying to like touch on these questions from Paul here.
Oh, yeah, no worries. Yeah,
He's got
sorry.
a question about if the setup cost like like whatever like let's say whatever the setup cost to run validators and his question is if the rewards for running it doesn't reach that number. So Paul, I can actually probably take this one. Well, I can't tell you how much the server is going to cost, but what happens whenever you don't basically break even or make a profit for running the validators is you're going to have less people running them. So like the people that are running them basically get more rewards. That's how this should work in a decentralized network.
Correct.
And like that's something Hive deals with too, because there's like 21 full witnesses, and then there's like a list of like backup witnesses down to like 50, and after that it's kind of like very hit or miss whether or not you get anything. Well, like what happens is basically the people that don't find it worthwhile to run the nodes just stop running them. But like as the price of SPS goes up, it becomes more lucrative, and then you see like more people are going to want to turn on nodes, and the same thing happens with Hive, right? Like as Hive price goes up, you'll see more nodes come online. But yeah, it's definitely pretty important to have a solid core of people that are going to be running the nodes. You have any guess at all on like what the price of like to run a node will be, PJ?
I do not. I could probably pull specs from our current AWS infrastructure and give you guys a more clear number after we get our cutovers done. So that's just because we're running new clean instances on everything. I'd be more effective at doing and giving you a much better answer as soon as we're done with that.
Okay. Will validators have any effect on like how SPS works on other chains like BSC?
So we pull in third-party chains through API transactions. Like we capture those transactions, but as far as validating on those chains, it's not possible right now. So if we're gonna, that requires a whole separate infrastructure for us to launch on top of full validators on top of any of the EVM chains that we would have. It would be a completely separate service. So um,
So basically, we'll just be validating them coming in and out of like the Splinterlands ecosystem, right?
yeah. Um, Sorry, I'm just getting a text as it's coming in for something related to work. So um, I've got a couple minutes. Yeah, I've got to hop on another call here in a few minutes. Do we want to go through any of the other
Yeah,
questions real
let's see.
quick?
I got like three more we can hit real quick. Or maybe
Okay.
four. Let's see. Once validators are live, will SPS still be tradable on Hive dexes like tribal dex?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it
So like
will.
I don't
That's
think
an
it'll have any
easy
effect
answer.
there.
Yeah.
What
The answer is yes.
what security audits or reviews will be done prior to going live? Are you guys planning any third party audits?
Unfortunately, no. We're not. We're trial by fire, unfortunately, because there's not really any good security audit teams for Hive that I know of, at least, unless anybody would like to refer them. But as it stands right now, we do it just like we do everything else with Sprinterlands. We test it rigorously internally, and then we'll open it up to a small group of people to test more wide scale, and then we let it go live and just basically monitor everything that happens while it's going on. That's how we've typically done it. And unfortunately, what you'll find is a lot of the auditors that I've worked with in the past on different EVM projects and for other large organizations it's all pretty standard stuff that they test. It's never like they just have a playbook that they go down, right? All the actual one-off use cases come from understanding issues from just legacy code and everything else. So, not
So
saying that there's any of that kind of baked into it, but no, we don't. There's no real good third-party audit services for Hive like that.
it's interesting. Like I was gonna actually pretty much say the exact same thing as you do on this one, because I had to deal with audits. Like I was actually the person that was reaching out to get the audits done on the SPS contracts before. Just to like give you guys like a understanding, like we have passed audits with two different firms. Like a lot of these firms, it's literally just like rubber stamping, in my opinion. It's like they just like give them 10, 15 grand. They're gonna run some automated tests and then give you the rubber
Yeah,
stamp,
use
and
some
they don't have
stamp of
any
approval. Yeah,
right. So like that actually kind of ties in with this next question, because recently we've been seeing the token as getting like flagged as high risk on PancakeSwap. Um, and it's like I had to
100%.
look into it. It's like flagged as a centralization risk, and I've actually reached out to both of the organizations that are flagging us. Which, surprise, surprise, I've gotten no response from either one of them yet. Um, but yeah, like basically, like I can show them our audits and everything if that's what they want. But I'm actually wondering if it's like basically just a shakedown because they're like, hey, give us another 15 grand and we'll give you another rubber stamp or whatever. But yeah, so as far as like the I guess it's kind of like not completely related to validators, but as far as like that the flagging us on Pancake Swap for a centralization risk, do you know anything that we can do to resolve that without like relaunching the token or something?
Yeah, press releases. Talk about our decentralization. That's probably how they're aggregating most of those stats in the first place. Um, I unfortunately I got to get running. You got one last question for me? I
Yeah,
have
yeah, yeah.
kind of
Just
a an important phone call I got to hop on for the company here.
yeah, cool. Are we on target to release by end of the year, or do you have a time frame for when you're thinking
Yeah, I
we'll?
think the next available slot that we have open for deployments based on our 2 week deployment schedules, January 7th. So hold me or don't hold me to it. I think, or was it 7th? Yeah, I think it was 7th. Let me see.
So you're looking at like early January.
Yeah, yes, sir. And that should be for public release, right? And that's also just mind you, like we don't have a whole lot of deployment time between the holidays because we're not evil, vicious people. We did this last year with land. We had devs that were working on their holidays. It's terrible. So I don't want to do that again.
Okay, cool.
Definitely not putting. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just not
I know you
fair. These
gotta.
guys already
uh,
work like way more than 40 hours. So
Yeah, I know you gotta get out of here. We definitely appreciate you taking the time to come and answer a lot of the questions today. Guys, I see like Paul's like dropping one more, but if you guys have other questions, just drop them. I will try to follow up with PJ and get answers. And yeah,
yeah, and
definitely
I
appreciate you.
don't mind hopping on here too. If we ever want to just have, I love getting in front of everybody. So happy to hop on when I can. Appreciate you guys. Thank you very much. And again, Clay, thank you again for all your hard work, dude. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for coming out, man. We appreciate you too.
All right,
Later, man.
bye.